Welcome to the Fort Collins Fellows podcast. From Colorado State University to New Belgium Brewery and the hundreds of miles of hiking and biking trails, Fort Collins has earned its well-deserved reputation as one of the top places to live in the United States. Your hosts, Patrick and Chris, were born and raised in Fort Collins. Patrick owns and runs Soukup Real Estate Services, a top-rated real estate brokerage company here in Fort Collins. Chris is the co-owner of the Murphy Whitlock Group, a top-rated residential mortgage broker based out of Fort Collins. Now join the fellas as they uncover the stories, places, and people that make Fort Collins so exceptional.
All right, everybody. Well, we have an amazing episode for everybody today. We always talk about the local beer scene in Fort Collins. We're like the Napa Valley of the beer scene here, but we are thrilled to have the owners of Horse and Dragon with us, Tim and Carol. By the way, congratulations on your 10th anniversary.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
But we are thrilled to have you guys on. I used to live right around the corner from you. We used to go there all the time. But no, we'd love to get started. I know a lot of people in town know of Horse and Dragon. But wow, how you guys came up with the name, the history behind it, all the traveling you guys have been doing to kind of, do all the research. But I'm going to toss it over to you, Carol and Tim. And why don't you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about Horse and Dragon and how you guys created this awesome company and great beer?
Okay, so first, can we just back up and
Sure, you can back.
Address why you used to come in, but you don't anymore?
I moved to a different part. My bad. You know what? I've already got called out. I should.
There's something there that we need to know, that we need to work on it.
No. You guys. Well, I live. The old airport that you guys back up to. We were over in Dry Creek, and we would ride our bikes over all the time. We would hit Funkworks, and then we'd hit Horse and Dragon.
Nice.
But you're right. You know what? I got to get my wife and my little baby. We need to come back over and see you guys.
Well, if it's anything that on our part, just shoot an email. Because
we take consumer feedback. We don't have money for research, so
I love it.
Go to research anytime.
Yeah, but how we came to be Horse and Dragon, I think, right, is basically the question.
Yeah. I want to know, because I was curious about the name myself, and when I found out how you guys came up with the name, I loved it. So I thought that was really cool.
So we spent about half our adult. Well, I
used to be
when we opened. I said we spent about half our adult lives in Asia. Now we're so old. We're 10 years older. So now we spend more than half our adult lives in the U.S. West, where the horse obviously has done so much work. Yeah. And previously we spent 10 years in Asia, where the dragon, every country we lived in, the dragon had huge positive symbolic importance. And so we liked that it represented those parts of our lives while we were talking about opening a craft brewery. We talked about it for 22 years before we finally pulled the trigger. So
it's amazing.
Never ones to make rash commitments. But and then we think it sounds like a British pub, and we've had gazillion hours of really fun times gathering with people in British pubs, sometimes with total strangers who become less of strangers over the course of an evening, or sometimes with friends. Everywhere we've lived around the world and in the US, there's been a British pub in the town where we are. So we like the cadence of it. Horse and Dragon sounds a little like a British pub.
Yep.
Then Tim's Year of the Horse and I'm Year of the Dragon in the Chinese Zodiac. So we just liked it for those reasons.
Where in Asia did you guys live? You guys 10 years there. That's a long time.
We first moved to Hong Kong, and we lived there for about a year and a half, and that was pre-China owning it, I suppose.
Okay.
Pre-handover, so it was still a British colony. And then
I told you we were old.
Yeah, we spent a quick year in Guam, which is kind of the suburb of Asia.
Uh-huh.
And then we were back into Asia full on, 3 years in Taiwan, another year and a half in Vietnam. We lived in Saigon, and then back up in Taiwan for another 3 years. So really 6 of the 10 was in Taiwan, and our daughters were both born there. So we have close ties to the people of Taiwan. So
I love it. That's great.
Then we moved to the foreign land of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So.
A little bit of culture shock there.
Yeah.
Milwaukee.
I will say it was the biggest culture shock we experienced. I think partly because you sort of prepare yourself to be a foreigner when you're moving overseas, but we didn't realize how different the culture was. I grew up in Colorado. Tim grew up in Oregon. I did not realize how different the Midwest culture was from the sort of West, U.S. West, and it's not maybe as different as Ho Chi Minh City is to Fort Collins, but it is because we were thinking, oh, we're going home. there were a lot of disjuncts that we just didn't anticipate or address in advance. Whereas when we moved overseas, we were prepared for that kind of
And you guys had the idea prior to, you said you 22 years coming up with this idea. So when you went to Asia, like, was there like, the Asian beers, was that an influence on you guys or anything like that? Or it was just kind of, we're going to get the heck out of Dodge and do something different?
So Tim spent, we were following Tim's career around Asia. I had a job in the place we lived, but I didn't, it was never in the same arena. So Tim eventually ended up with Miller Brewing Company and spent 16 years with them, some of that in Taipei and some of it in Milwaukee. And we appreciate what big business beer does, but we always sort of craved the flavor and the small sort of community that craft beer tends to create.
100%.
And so we sort of sought it out. Tim and a friend homebrewed both in Milwaukee, and also we moved to Bogota, Colombia for a couple of years. And there was a guy who homebrewed there that we spent a lot of time with. And we also sought out craft breweries everywhere that we lived. So there weren't a ton of craft breweries when we were living in those spots in Asia, and finding really flavorful beer. I think that's probably why you started homebrewing, actually.
Yeah. Well, I would say the other side is that when we lived overseas, every time you come home, and we came home every year for home leave, we would go to the great places of Oregon and Colorado. So we were able to get pretty good craft beer. So it was almost a contrast to what we could find in Asia. So I think it was, like Carol said, I mean, it was the flavors and the craft side of it on the product side, but also mainly the kind of upstart and the community feel that these places that we saw in Oregon, as well as here in Fort Collins, when we come to visit. We're kind of like, this is pretty cool. It's just like a neat nexus of not just a business that you want to, you need to crank out widgets and sell a ton of them. It's more about creating something, but also creating the consumer side and having connections there. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
We had a group on, and I know you guys are just very involved with the community. And obviously, like Mayor Jenny Arndt had, she was very excited to suggest you guys come on for the podcast. And it's an awesome thing to have Horse and Dragon as part of the Fort Collins community. Do you guys see kind of like an influx, especially probably since you guys have come in onto the scene, an influx of microbreweries that are kind of either like fun to have as competitors or kind of more difficult to compete in that landscape?
Both of those things, I think. And even when we joined, there were some comments on social media when various platforms announced that we were opening. Oh, just what we need, another brewery. And then after we opened, there's been now another 12 breweries more that have opened. Do you want to do the stats for nationwide?
Yeah, I mean, nationally, when we opened, we were about 2,500 craft breweries in the country, and now this last year we're right at 10,000. So it's quadrupled.
Oh my God!
But in Colorado, when we started, we were like 217 or 218 or something like that, and now there's about 450. So it's doubled. Mm-hmm. But Colorado was ahead of the curve at the time, right? And so that makes sense. And even in Fort Collins, we were number 13 when we opened. I think now we're the eighth oldest, because a couple have closed, et cetera. But now there's a total of around 24, 25 here in Fort Collins. So that doubled as well. So I think your question is more about getting along. And we just had something that we had done before COVID. I feel like the bar was set pretty high in terms of connection with other breweries built by New Belgium, Odell, and Coopersmiths. The three pioneers really set the bar for a couple things. One of them is get along with each other and let's help each other out. Rising tide floats all boats. You've heard Kim Jordan say that 4 million times. Mm-hmm. And we're still in that boat, in that zone. I mean, the craft beer, even though it's pretty large in Fort Collins and Colorado, it's still only like 13 share of the total beer market in the country. So anytime
there's space, there's more pie for us all.
Right.
If we can just figure out, how to carve into that.
And I think the other side of it was that they set that community, like, help each other. So we have a couple of email lists that are, hey, I need a bag of white wheat. Can somebody get that to me? No problem, because my shipment didn't come. And that just happens. We all know each other. We hang out. We did a kind of something that we had done before COVID, which is like happy hours for all the brewers. Just come over to a brewery and hang out and bring some beers and just chat about stuff, because we used to see each other a lot at festivals. Mm-hmm. We would always end up at one of the tents,
Like the Great American Beer Festival or one of those?
Yeah. Great American or the one downtown here. I mean, when it's Colorado Beer Fest, we'd all hang out together at the tent, and then the Boulder guy would be like, "You guys like each other? That's so weird." like, no, but we do. We hang out. And so actually the CSU fermentation piece is now bringing sort of that thing back together because they have events where they want brewers to gather. And so it gives us a chance to see each other more often than we do. I
was just going to say, it would be great to have more like, just strictly just local brewery festivals.
It would. You're right.
And I was thinking about it because we interviewed Patrick. Remember we were talking to, he's the director of the CSU Flower Gardens out before College High School. Yeah. And he was great. And he was like talking to Patrick. He's like, I'd love to do like a tulip festival or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, then bring a bunch of local breweries and,
Yes.
I'm like, we might just have to, create our own.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right. Talk to us about Sad Panda, my favorite Horse and Dragon beer. How did you guys come up with Sad Panda and why is it so delicious?
So that was the creation of our first head brewer. And when we opened, we had 3 fermenters and we opened with 6 beers. And, but the fermentation part of the process is the bottleneck. And so she split the IPA and the stout that she had made, and she added ingredients to half the batch of each of those. And the ingredients she added to the stout were vanilla and cold brew coffee. And she had been working on the recipe for that combination. And this base stout is amazing. And I think that is what makes the beer so great. The coffee that we use for some reason blends really nicely with the malts in the stout. And then that vanilla suggests a lot of sweetness. So if you try the base stout and the Sad Panda next to each other, there actually is technically no additional sugar in the Sad Panda. But because of the vanilla, your brain makes you think that it's more chocolatey. And it is a delicious beer. Her name's Lindsay Cornish. She's a fantastic brewer and great with flavors. I don't think she's brewing now. She's gone on to several other jobs since she left us. But that beer lives on, man. It is, and bless it, because it's a great light-bodied stout that people are willing to drink all summer, all winter.
Yeah.
And especially during COVID, it just absolutely kept our lights on.
That's awesome.
And how'd you come up with the name?
Yeah.
That also was her suggestion. She had 6 names she wanted to use. That this is the way she used to talk to her dog. She had 6 names that were animals and emotions. And so we do a little trademark search before we name even a one-off batch. And if there's a brewery, if it's trademarked, obviously we don't use it. If there's a brewery in Colorado that has used the name, even if it's not trademarked, we don't use the name. And if it comes up with something nasty on Urban Dictionary for one of the first 2 definitions, we don't use it. If it's the third or more, we go ahead and use it. We're like, okay, only a few perverted people.
You don't even think about that.
No.
But, and so of those 6, I think there were 2 that were trademarked, and she used 3 of them, I think.
We used Curious Cricket,
Agitated Aardvark.
There was one other one.
Anyway, and Sad Panda, we didn't know. Luke, he used to be our lead sales guy, and now he's sort of running half the company. So I don't know really what to call him.
I see his name all over your website. Yeah,
good. Yeah, he's been with us since.
If we were a bigger company, I mean, we only have 8 full-time people. So if we were actually 7, I think. If we were a bigger company, he would be our director of operations. But that's kind of a huge title for such a small company. But he was our lead sales guy, and he actually did say, I think there's a hole in the market for a light-bodied stout, or a light-bodied dark beer. And so we presented both that stout and Sad Panda, the H&D dark chocolate stout and Sad Panda. And for some reason, consumers ordered Sad Panda more than, a lot. And the second summer we were open, we sort of had scaled down the production of Sad Panda in anticipation of the summer, and we ran out of it. So the demand went up during that second summer. So it's still, I mean, we're a super small brewery. So I don't know if you guys are familiar. We measure our production in barrels. A barrel of beer is 31 gallons, which is different than a barrel of wine, which is different than a barrel of whiskey. So it's
just to mess everybody up.
Yeah. Sounds like the American measurement system.
I was thinking like that.
Hard. We shouldn't stand up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so last year we produced 2,500 barrels of beer, which is, in pretty sharp contrast to the bigger breweries in town. But and of that, what was it? Maybe close to
about 40%.
is.
How often are you guys kind coming up with new beer?
Hold on. I want to hear that. 40% is what?
Oh, sorry.
Is Sad Panda.
40% is Sad Panda.
Yeah. And it used to be well over 50%, but it is inching down because we have a couple of IPAs that are, and a light Pilsner that is eating into Sad Panda's market share of our own internal market share.
It's probably pretty cool to see. I mean, like that's just shows like another beer is becoming popular because Sad Panda is such a strong beer for you guys. I mean, to your point in the summer, I mean, I was in a golf tournament, a scramble, and it was, I don't know, July, and I cracked open a Sad Panda, at 2:00 in the afternoon, which is like, I was like thinking, what am I doing? But I was like, that's just what I wanted, and it was delicious.
That's awesome. That's good to hear.
I like it. It's the golf beer. Everybody says that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Pat. Yeah, I want to talk more about Patrick's golf. I didn't know he was getting out there in the links. That's good. That's good to see.
Quite
good to hear,
horrible.
actually. That's
quite horrible.
I'm a complete degenerate golfer, so
Nice.
But I was just curious, how often are you guys coming up with new recipes and like changing the taps behind you?
All the time. Like Friday, we're releasing a new beer.
So
breaking news.
Look at it from a structural standpoint, which we rarely do, but it just happened this way, is that we have probably a third of we have about 12 to 14 beers at any given time. A third of them are year-round staples like Sad Panda or Silver Lion or Czech Style Pilsner or Hazen Dragon, the hazy IPA, whatever. Those are year-round. Then we have a couple, usually maybe 3 to 5 that are seasonals that we've maybe done in the past, or we do more than one batch up. We run them for a couple of months at a time, maybe a quarter or 4 months. And then there's always one-off batches, and that's what keeps the brewers interested. I think we're doing things not only on our 15-barrel system, which is 30 half barrels, so that's a decent amount of beer. But we also do things on our pilot system, which is about a 1 barrel. So our brewers are engaged enough and want to try new things. If they're doing experiments on whether it's on new hops that are coming out or different styles that we might want to try but not commit to fully. We do that on a pilot system first and run it in the tasting room and then see how it goes. So there's always something new.
One of our brewers is getting married in June, and he's made an I think it's a red IPA.
Yeah, I think so.
For his that won't be released in the tap room. That's just going to his
wedding. Yeah, so that's the beauty of the pilot system, right? Is that gives them both of them a chance to do things that they like. Or if we have an event that we want to support, usually it's a nonprofit that we want to support heavily. We'll maybe do a beer for that, or we donate to a charity auction, like come and make your own beer. And those seem to be pretty popular for raising money for nonprofits, which is great because we want that to happen. So there's new stuff all the time, I guess, is to answer the main question.
Yeah. So you guys are given like a lot of freedom to your brewers to just go do. Are you like the final say, yes or no? Do you guys all sit around a table and like taste it and go, this is great, or this did not turn out very well?
It's rare that we dump batches, but we will dump batches. And I think for the brewers, the caliber of brewer that we're trying to employ, they like that we are willing to dump a batch because often, we're operating on pretty thin margins and nobody is paid very much we aren't paid at all. And our staff is not paid hugely. So they know that every penny is pretty precious, but brewers do not want bad beer that their name is on out. So that our commitment to being willing to dump stuff, I think does free them up to play around quite a bit. But we've been lucky. I mean, we've had 3 head brewers where our current head brewer, his last day is Friday and he's going back to the world of engineering, and we're very sad to lose him, but we are very excited about who's coming in to replace him. And so far we've been super lucky because they are very good. I mean, they all have experience by the time they reach us, and they're very good with flavors and understanding hops and malts and the way they interact. It's
pretty rare that we dump a batch. I can't even do it. I mean, it's on one hand, we can count over 10 years how many batches we've actually dumped because of the quality of the beer. Usually it's something that goes wrong in the process. But anyway, for the other side of it is that's where the pilot system comes in, right? They can try things. And if we don't really, the beer might be fine in terms of quality, but the style might not be something that anybody likes or wants to continue with, and then we just don't do it. Right? So it sounds like a difficult process, but actually it just flows pretty well. Not to use up, too bad.
And you guys were talking about getting involved with, contributing to, and being involved with some nonprofits. I know one of the groups that we had on our podcast was Yimby, and I know that they've held some, events with you guys. And, I know you guys, and like I said, Jenny Art, and you guys are talking about all the friendships you have with the collaborators. And this is obviously called, Fort Collins Fellows. It's all about, Fort Collins and the support of Fort Collins. How have you guys, seen, giving back to the community? Talk to us a little bit about some of the different organizations you're a part of or support. I think it's just really important for us to see hey, the reason why we go support local is because they're supporting other local. And it's just kind of this, circulating cycle.
So we feel pretty fortunate to be working with a product that is has a little bit of a buffer zone between the harsh realities of life. Like, people generally come in here when they have enough disposable income to afford a really fine pint of beer, and when they're celebrating, or also sometimes when they're grieving, but we're not dealing with a lot of the nitty gritty tough times in life. And in Fort Collins, it's an unbelievable number of people and organizations that are dealing with that all the time and making this community stronger and better for their support. And so we feel like if the very least we can do, luckily we have a product that a lot of them can use to encourage gathering or donations or conversations, sparking conversations that they find necessary. So we try to contribute every time we can. So we do get asked, and I'm sure every brewery in town gets asked every day. And so we have to set up a sort of a sieve to figure out where we go the extra mile versus where we just consider, here's a growler fill or come on in and we'll buy your organization a round of pints while you're having your discussion. And those places where we try to go the extra mile are nonprofit areas of interest of our staff. So when people come on board, that's part of their onboarding process, is they indicate where they're interested in contributing in the community. And so if those requests come in from organizations that are working in those areas, we try to pay special attention to them and try and come up with something more. It's pretty hard for us. We have donated a fair amount of straight up dollars, but again, that's hard for us because we're trying to pay our people enough to live in Northern Colorado. Mm-hmm. You guys are in the real estate industry, you know better than I what the situation is, but there's not one person in our company that makes the AMI here. And that's not because we're peeling money off the top, because we don't pay ourselves from the company. Mm-hmm. So we really are trying to make craft brewing a financially viable business for the people who work in it. And so getting money out of us is very difficult for a nonprofit. It does happen, but not often. But getting beer out of us we're pretty much pushovers.
Yeah.
But I think that, you asked about specific areas, and I think Carol's loath to talk about it because she's the driver and leads this a lot in our company. And so, Yimby's and that kind of section, neighbor to neighbor, is a huge effort in our community that provides, as you know, really an amazing service to keep people in housing. That's like a goal of life. And we believe those people are the ones that are actually helping to support the community that we all love, right? They're the ones working in whether it's a fireman or somebody working in a restaurant or working at the city. We want to make sure that people stay in housing. So neighbor to neighbor is a big one that we would like to support as much as we can. We also look at water issues. Obviously, water is important to our product, but it's also important to our environment here as people that live in Northern Colorado.
It's a huge part of what I think it makes Northern Colorado an attractive place to live.
Right.
The river, the reservoir.
Right. And all the things that go with that. Yeah.
Trees. Yeah.
So the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed is a big beneficiary that we look at and try and over support on those. And then there's a long list, but it's usually, like Carol said, we have a lot of requests. And so we do have a little bit of a filter that we try to use, and we use our employees' areas of focus when we're going to support more, like do a donation of a brew or something like that. That would be to some organization that would be supporting one of our people's interests. So.
There was just an article out in the Coloradoan, Joe Palmer and Hello Brew. They made a Joe Palmer brew. What's kind of do you guys ever do kind of like you were talking about the weddings, the one-offs, but just something like for those either events or something kind of more geared towards marketing? Like, this could be really fun. This is popular. Let's make a brew towards that.
We have done that regularly, actually. Like well, right now we have Fire Captain Irish Red on. Every time that's on, we donate $1 a pint. It used to be exclusively to the Firefighter Community Compassion Fund, but now that that's a year-round beer, we're looking at divvying that up a little more. We've done brews for Sava, where 100% of the proceeds went to Sava, to both the Maui fires and the California fires when there were, and that was not that those two efforts were organized by other breweries in those areas. Our current head brewer came from Maui Brewing Company. So when Maui Brewing Company was raising that support, he asked us to participate. And of course we wanted to. And then, we've done an Ashes to Art beer, which was after the Cameron Peak fire. It was an artists movement to make artwork with incorporating some of the ash of that fire and auction that off and raise money for the two fire departments that were integral in fighting that fire, which was, very difficult. Yeah. Really cool.
I remember when I lived over in Dry Creek, I remember seeing the flames. That was crazy. Yeah. Just right there on the foothills. Unbelievable. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the movement of NA beer right now? I know my wife and I enjoy it from time to time. And I think Athletic Brewing is a big player in that industry. What are your thoughts on that? Would you guys ever do something like that? Because it seems like it's gaining a lot of traction right now.
I think,
or is that like
we're all for it.
Okay.
The people who have, in our opinion, the people who have made very good NA beer have invested multi-million dollars in their system, which we just don't have.
Yeah.
We've had also some very bad NA beer. It is a different process from what we currently do. So we could not use our equipment as it is.
Oh, I was curious about that. So you can't use the same equipment to do. Okay.
And I think, it is also a different license, and it is treated more as a food product because it doesn't have the preservative of alcohol in it. So there's a whole bunch of different HACCP procedures and storage and
like food regulations.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so it is a big endeavor to do and we think it's a big endeavor to do in a way where it tastes right. Good. So Athletic is a giant company.
Huge.
And good on them for doing it, because I think we did. A couple years ago or a year and a half ago, start to offer a couple of non-alcoholic products here, which we can offer under our current license. But and it's fun. Actually, the response to it has been amazing. We have a friend who posted, and I had no idea she felt this way. She doesn't drink, and she comes in sometimes, but with friends or whatever. But she posted how great it was to feel like she could participate in the sampling of new products now and get back into the craft beer scene without having to drink alcohol. So we have a sparkling water that we rotate flavors on. Not rotate, we just start doing progressively different flavors. And then golden root beer as well.
Okay.
Those two things we can produce here without massive infrastructure investment.
There's some like local kombucha. Am I saying that right? Kombucha?
Sure. We carry those as well in the cooler. But I think to the NA beer piece, and it's interesting, even how you phrased it. You said, we enjoy that from time to time. So I'm like, that's cool. Because what that shows me is that you haven't switched 100%.
Oh, no. And we will never do that.
I don't know you. I've never met you, but
I love a cold brew, Tim. That'll never.
Okay, good. I hope so. Like a panda on the golf course, right?
That's right.
Exactly. Hopefully you can adopt that from Patrick. But I think the non-alcoholic category has always been there. I mean, I've been in beer for 30 years, and it's there's always a segment of the market that is non-alcoholic, but it's just that it goes in waves in terms of branding, right? So there's a lot of times it's other non-alcoholic drinks that might fill that void for every now and then when you want to have something, not you're like, oh, seltzer water or whatever. But I think now Athletic has really driven the idea of non-alcoholic beer and done it well enough that people will buy it. And it takes a lot of that segment. Even though the segment's pretty small, if you look at it globally, they're still pretty large, right? So I don't know, that's kind of a weird description I get.
No, I think that's a great take. I because I just keep reading more and more about it. Like even overseas, like you talk, like Germany, I think it's like 5% of their beer sales are now NA, which you never.
Yeah, and that's pretty high. Yeah. Yep. Well, Germany has lower ABV anyway, so they're that switch for them is a little bit easier, I think.
Anyway, I realized my German heritage, they're a bunch of wimps when it came to beer.
Oh no, they just drink volume. A lot of volume.
But I think I don't want to underplay the importance of having options for people who never drink alcohol. Like we also are supportive
Absolutely.
of that.
Oh no, 100%.
Particularly if you think you have a problem with alcohol, we don't want to encourage you
Sure.
to, yeah. So I mean, I think that's a really vital part of the industry.
You bet.
I hope that we're small enough and we don't have any plans to grow giant. I hope that we're small enough that we can continue just producing great beer and still sell enough of it to survive.
Yeah.
Whether or not we can play that right remains to be seen, second over the next 10 years.
I was okay. So that's perfect. A good, so that, what are your goals for the next 10 years? Is it it sounds like it's to remain a lifestyle type of business that provides a great beer locally. Do you guys have goals to increase distribution to other, areas that you're not currently in? What are some goals of Horse and Dragon?
You're going like this. I'm going like this. We listen to questions differently, apparently, but I think we have the same answer.
So really,
I was like nodding, and she's going like this.
I don't think we have any goals to expand our distribution. We do have a small distributor in Denver who distributes for us everywhere south of Longmont and up I-70, so into the mountains. But again, we're so small that if you look for us in a liquor store in Grand Junction, you're going to have to look pretty hard to find us. So really our market is here in Northern Colorado and some in Denver. And we don't have any delusions about getting bigger than that. We don't ever want to do overnight shifts or weekend shifts for our brewers. If we can figure out how to do that. It is really challenging to grow in the current environment. It's really challenging to grow your distribution and offtake. But I think we could work on that if we wanted to. My main goal over the next 10 years is to make sure that whatever I'm doing for the company can be replaced by a paid job before I go toes up. So that's what I'm working toward.
I'm glad you asked that question. So now I know what her goal is.
Clearly, we work a lot on strategy together.
I think the next 10 years, I feel like our company is structured as such that we try to spread the love, right? The product, we want to have the product available to anybody who wants it, right? We're not going to ever push it on anybody, but we want, if people say, hey, I can't find it in my local liquor store, I try and say, where is that? Let's talk about it and get somebody to go see them the next day. That type of thing. We believe in the brands that we're building and also the product itself, but also the, kind of the essence that is Horse and Dragon. Like you said, it's sort of, we try and be a good contributor to the community as one of our kind of our 4 company goals is to be a proactive member of our community. So ideally people see that and then they go, wow, this beer is pretty good too. So let's do that. So that's what we're trying to promote. And I think distribution, like Carol said, is we have sort of 2 foci. One of them is Northern Colorado. And I feel like we're doing better at that. And we'll grow some here for sure, still across the region in Northern, but also then the stuff that's south of, that's Boulder and south into Denver and up into the mountains. So I think, that's through a distributor. So it's a little bit less control. So I think what we're trying to do is just make sure that we're a player here and we can be a contributor to the community here.
Is there any thoughts about, sorry, Patrick, you guys are located kind of in the industrial center, like off of Mulberry and everything like that. Any conversations about opening another tap room?
Well, that's where I was going. At one point, I saw a conceptual review for a place, I think off of Sherwood, maybe, that you guys were considering, but I think maybe some obstacles. I think it was like an automotive place or something that you guys were looking at one point.
It's actually very reminiscent of the establishment we have out here. Like that's part of the reason we liked it. This was an old airplane hangar for a tiny plane. And then it was an automotive shop. And then it was a wrestling gym. And now it's a brewery. So we liked that sort of industrial look to it. But we ran into a bunch of difficulties with the floodplain issues that we just didn't have the funds to overcome. And whoever ends up developing that space is going to have some challenges. Keep an
eye on it, because I had a house off of Riverside that was in a floodplain, and I was going to do a huge remodel on it. I still own it today, and they shifted the floodplain, and it was a year after I bought it. But when I was going through it, the city goes, "Oh, you're doing such a renovation that you're going to have to go through current code. You're going to have to raise your building 3 feet." And I was like, well, that's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. And 3 feet. It's 3. It's not 6 or 12. It's 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was like, that's not happening. And the year later, they changed the floodplain map and I was no longer in it. So I would have spent $100,000 to do raising my building. So maybe that'll change and you guys can go back to that property here in the future.
Well, that was the one we were looking for maybe 6 months, and not just in Fort Collins, but also in Greeley and Windsor and Loveland. And we're kind of glad that we went so far with that property, because what it really made us do was get down to brass tacks about how we're going to manage our team right now. We all know each other. It's very like a family, including dysfunction, led probably by me. But it's very hard to maintain that with your staffing needs when you're trying to manage 2 different places. Particularly if you, like, one of the things we love about being here is that we do know the community and we do volunteer for a lot of stuff and sit on boards and get involved and have these conversations with people who are doing amazing work. And it's exhausting to do that. It's invigorating, but it's also exhausting. So to try to, we didn't want to go into another community and not be as much a part of that community as we are here. And so then we started really looking at bandwidth and how do we expand the bandwidth and how do we make sure that we have the commitment to do that. And it felt a little overwhelming, So,
I mean, it's kind of, I think like Carol said, it forced us to look at that in specificity, right? Because we have our business here, the tasting room business for us, it's about 20% of revenue, something like that. And the rest of it is our distribution outside. So adding another place, and again, trying to be part of that community, we looked at, like Carol said, a number of different areas and different properties. And we wanted to make sure that we did it right. We don't want to go there and just kind of send beer and have people from over there and have it be distant. We want it to be part of our culture, including the getting involved in that community wherever we end up.
And even having, and so then that, that brings us back to Fort Collins, to a secondary tap room here, and then staffing that tap room. And even now, partly because we're so small, so maybe it would have helped us to have that overlap. But when someone's sick here or needs a day off, someone else can step in. Like but if 2 people are sick, that starts to affect operations. And if 3 people are sick, we basically have to close. So then we just thought about multiplying that problem, because we have had that situation and just didn't feel ready to take it on.
Mm-hmm. But if they move the floodplain, maybe we'll look at it again. I appreciate that optimism.
That building will be long gone by then. Somebody.
And once they move
fantastic spot. Yeah.
Once they move the floodplain, that's going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, I just want to thank you guys. You guys are amazing entrepreneurs, business owners, and supporting local small business in Fort Collins. So just a shout out to both of you guys for just being awesome. That's so great.
Thank you guys for doing your thing. That's pretty cool.
I want to know why you guys.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of knuckleheads just asking stupid questions.
I like it. You're not in the same room, so you can't give you the.
Yeah. We've been doing the Zoom thing for, gosh, I don't know, a couple years.
Yeah, years. Right.
But you're listening a lot of information about a lot of different aspects of Fort Collins, and it's cool. It's a super cool resource to have for the community to be able to tune in. So, what made you want to start to do the podcast?
Gosh, Patrick, he approached me years ago and said, Murph, I did a podcast called Real Estate Ready when I got into the real estate industry. And I love podcasts and they've always been huge. And when I came up with that idea, I literally had people like, podcast, like, who listens to podcasts?
Right.
That was like 6 years ago. And now it's, they're much bigger. And Patrick, he used to listen to that and he came and he's like, Murph, we got to do a podcast. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. And finally we kind of came together and, we didn't want to do it around real estate. We wanted to do it, I was born and raised here. Patrick was born and raised here. And There's nothing really out there about, Fort Collins, we felt like. And, and a platform where you can, listen to people like you and owning small businesses, to the mayor of Fort Collins, to the chief of police, to, on and on and on. Coach Norvell from CSU football team, he came on. That was awesome. But no, we appreciate you guys. And yeah, so thank you guys so much. So we kind of end every episode. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. We always ask our guests what's their favorite patio to have a cold brew on.
Nice.
So you're not allowed, obviously Horse and Dragon is your favorite, but since you guys are so tightly, into the community and you're supporting each other, do you have another local brewery that you'd like to give a shout out to that you like to go grab a beer from time to time?
So beer on a brewery patio, that's what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not Horse and Dragon, because we know that's your
Right. Okay.
Right.
We were there last night. I mean, here last night.
Oh my gosh.
It's hard. Yeah.
It is hard. I mean,
Especially because we're friends with a lot of them.
Yeah. And they're all great. I mean, I love going to, if I'm down south, I will go to DC Oaks and have a good beer out on their patio. Or of course, Odell is the classic choice. And I also believe in what New Belgium is trying to do. I know there's a lot of pushback on when they sold, but I think they sold to try to support their people and do big things in the environmental world in beverages. And so we actually have volunteered for them at Tour de Fat and stuff. We really believe in what they're trying to do on a much more global scale than any of the rest of us can act. So it's an easy way out to call out the big guys, but Coops has also got a great patio. Yeah. Everybody has a great patio.
I know. That's why
I would pick Zvi. I like I like their pills a lot, and Kirk's a great dude, and Eric, those guys are awesome. But yeah, that's really hard. The new ones, I mean, we've been to Salt Road. Nice. It's pretty cool, and Myth Maker. Tom is great, and
which one is that? Myth Maker?
Yeah, choose.
It's hard to choose. It's hard to choose.
No, you guys any beer that is maybe like new to the scene that maybe somebody should try, that like some golfer that likes Sad Panda that's kind of goofy, you know? Like, is there?
You should definitely buy a 6-pack of Sad Panda and then something else. No, I don't. I'm trying to think of. I don't know.
So this is the weird thing. Before we opened, we were always going to breweries. But since we opened,
we go less.
Sure. Yeah.
If we have time away from the brewery, we go to like accounts that buy our beer,
right,
and sit and have a beer at the bar and chat with the bartender or whatever. So it's so strange that our beer tastes have been very narrowed since opening a brewery. It's kind of a weird
evolution. We should have asked you, like, if we were to open your refrigerator right now, what beer do you guys have in your refrigerator at home? None.
Again, boringly, it is all our beer. That's
okay. That's good.
Somebody brought us one beer. We have a Yingling. Someone brought us a Yingling from Pennsylvania or something. They were back there. So they're like, oh, I know that we can't get this here. You should try it. So I'm like, cool. Yeah. I mean, I've had a million of those, but it's, so we have that one in the fridge right now.
How about you guys? Where's your favorite patio?
Oh man.
Patrick?
Well, I haven't been on a patio in like 6 years. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I'm like,
oh yeah.
I'm just getting back into it, which is actually kind of cool. I'm like, they're not a liability as much as they were.
Yes.
But I would say, actually, we went kind of like a pub crawl, and like it was Funkworks and Horse and Dragon.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Funkworks is awesome.
And Stodgy's got a great.
They have a beautiful patio. Yeah.
You can run the kids around there. And
yeah. They can't get in trouble. There's food trucks there. I'm on the southeast side. Zwei is great. DC Oaks. But I think when we go and for like, just because there's so many huge events, we always seem to be invited to Odell's, because there's just so many events there on the patio.
Yeah, you bet.
I live right down the street, like 5-minute walk from the new beer garden, Prost, right there by the flower garden. Okay. So they did a good job with that, where they took over Boar's Head, the coffee place right there. But and then I grew up with Sean from Black Bottle too, so I used to walk over there. But I know he had to shut that down, and I think Verboten moved into there. So
yeah, and Josh is great brewer. Yeah, they'll have some great beers on over there.
Perfect. Well, you guys are awesome.
Thanks for all you do to the community. I mean, honestly, that's one thing. I mean, it was when Jenny referred you guys to us, I was like, absolutely. I know, Kate Conley with EMB was just, and Chris, they're just always talking so highly about you guys. And so thank you for all you guys do to the community, and as involved as you guys are. It's really, people like yourselves that make this community so special by giving back and then just reciprocation. So thank you so much.
No, it's awesome to be a part of it. We feel really grateful to be here.
You bet.
Perfect. Right. Well, you guys get back to brewing. No.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Friends of the podcast, thank you so much as always for tuning in. We thank you so much for your support. And just so you know, my amazing co-host Patrick Soukup over there, he is the founder, started Soukup Real Estate. If you ever need any questions about buying or selling, or just want a market report on your existing home, reach out to Patrick. His team is absolutely fantastic. Born and raised in Fort Collins. His information is right there on the page. Strongly recommend reaching out.
And same for you, Chris. As if you guys are looking at buying or refinancing a home here in Northern Colorado, There's nobody better to reach out to than the Murphy Whitlock Group, and Chris Murphy is going to take incredible care of you. So do not hesitate to reach out, ask questions. He is in no rush, no hurry. So give him a chance, and I think he's going to do a great job for you. Thank you for watching.